Hey y'all! Well, another thing that I've decided I'm going to try to work on. I bought 4 of these really nice oak chassis. And you can see they're like nice, nicely finished oak sides. They've got these extruded aluminum fronts. They've got, a nice thick aluminum top plate. There's like extruded aluminum braces underneath the wood on the inside. And then the bottom's got this nice drill pattern for vents. And it's just a really nice chassis. And I'll put a link in the description to the person that I got these from. And, obviously they don't have any holes or anything drilled in the top plate. But the rest of it's all fabricated up. So this is kind of nice that you can take this top plate off and work with it separate from the rest of the chassis. And I built my KT120 monoblocks out of a pair of these in the past. And trying to decide what I want to do, because like I said, I bought 4 of these, and he gave me a nice deal buying 4 of them at once. Like most things, you buy more quantity, you get a better deal. So I'm thinking about doing a 300B monoblock. And one of the reasons in the past that I haven't really gone down that route was the expense of buying double the power transformers and double the chokes and all that stuff. And if you go with off-the-shelf stuff from Hammond, most of it is designed for a stereo amp. Like once you get to a certain voltage level that you'd be able to power a 300B off of to get to the 400 volts or 360, 70 volts across the tube, and to get to even 360 volts you got to take the cathode voltage off, because I'm not doing a fixed bias or an adjustable bias 300B amp. That just, to me, that's just asking for problems. So cathode biased, you're losing 60 to 70 volts across the cathode resistor, so that means you got to add 70 volts to whatever. And again, you go to Hammond and you start looking up like what size transformer do I need to get to that voltage, especially using a tube rectifier. I promise you, nobody's going to buy a 300B amp that's got solid state rectification. They're going to say, oh, it's going to sound like a AM radio, or they want a tube rectifier. And so I realized that, and also realized using one 5AR4 and a stereo 300B amp is kind of pushing what a 5AR4 can handle. And I've learned that I need to use new old stock tubes in mine for them to be reliable. So anyway, what got me thinking about this was I was talking with Matt at Musical Power Supplies, and he's winding me up a custom stereo power transformer for 300B amp that's going to have 200 milliamps and all the stuff you need to do a 300B stereo amp. And we got to talking about it, and it was like, so what would it cost for you to make a mono version that would have 100 milliamps of current capability, which is, a little bit overkill, but that's fine. I mean, probably going to be running 80 milliamps across the tube. We're going to have less than 10 milliamps in the front end, but I like having a little bit of headroom, right? So what would it cost to do 100 milliamps with one 5 volt 3 amp for the rectifier tube, one 2 amp 6.3 volt, and then one 7 volt 2 amp to do the heaters for the 300B tube, with the headroom to make an LDO regulator work? And he gave me a price. And honestly, it's probably about 60% of the cost of the stereo one. So instead of doubling the cost going to monoblocks, it's going to be, 120%. We do have to duplicate the rectifier tube. We're duplicating the chassis, duplicating the IEC connector. We're duplicating the choke, which he also said that he can make a 100 milliamp choke that I would need that would top mount. And the transformers would be a little smaller too. And then it starts making sense. And so I think that's what I'm going to do with these. He's sending me a couple of these transformers. I think I'm going to go ahead and tell him to go on making a couple of chokes. And I'm not sure what output transformers I'll use. Probably going to use some ISOs, but I'm not sure yet. And we may go with, I don't know, if I'm building monoblocks, I probably should just use the big dog ones and, not mess around with that. But power supply, we should be able to get the cost reduced where these things wouldn't be just insanely expensive. And that was the problem with those KT120 monoblocks, which I would still sell those to somebody, anybody who's interested, but I'd need to get $3,000 a piece for them to recover the time and the money that I've spent in them. And people say they want monoblocks, but then they want a pair of monoblocks to be the same, to be cheaper than what a stereo amp would be, and that's just not how it works. And so, let me know what you think. I mean, I'm going to go ahead and do this, and I want to see what they sound like. And I'm actually thinking about making them with a volume control on them so that you don't have to use a preamp with them if you don't want to. And then if you are going to use a preamp, you just turn the volume control all the way up, and then there you go. The other option would be to, instead of having like a big volume knob on the front, would be to have just like an attenuator next to the RCA jack, kind of like I do on my color preamp, and have a really nice pot that you can with a little screwdriver adjust the volume, because I find for my own use I rarely change the volume level from listening session to listening session. I mean, it just sits in the same spot. And so for me, if I wanted to have like the clean look of a monoblock with just a power switch on the front and still be able to control the gain that the amp has, have a little attenuator, and it would also be good for somebody that's using a preamp. In case you have a preamp that's hotter than normal, you could turn down the input sensitivity of the amp, or you could turn it just up all the way and it's bypassed, because once the wiper goes all the way to the end, it's just a direct connection, a direct short. It's not even in the signal path anymore. And you're going to have a resistor from the grid to the ground on the amplifier anyway. And so should have zero impact on the sound once you turn it all the way up. And I found these Audio Note volume pots to be very transparent anyway. And I know that's a whole nother debate thing, and I guess if somebody didn't want that, you could just jumper it out of the system and just hook the RCA jack straight up to the thing and just put a little indicator light in the hole or something. I'm kind of leaning towards having just a little attenuator versus a volume control on them. And that way they look like they're power monoblocks, but you could run them just straight off a DAC and not be using the volume control on the DAC. Let me know what you think about that idea. I mean, that's kind of what I'm leaning towards, because I really like the way the front of those KT120 monos look with just that like Angel Eye power switch on the front and the little Skokie Designs logo. And yeah, that's what I think I'm going to do with these things. So let me know what you think about that idea, about making some 300B monoblocks out of this thing, and what transformers I should choose, because that's going to have a serious impact on the price point. Because a pair of those transformers, I just bought a pair, and they're $1,000 for a pair, and they're talking about a 25% tariff. I can't keep up if that went into effect or if that was just another scare tactic. Anyway, if that does go into effect, then they're $1,250 for a pair, and then these things are going to be expensive. But like we've talked about, I kind of feel like that there's not a lot of point in going into a 300B amp if you're going to use budget parts, especially the tubes. But people want 300 B amps, and sometimes to get to a 300 B amp at a price point that people can afford, some compromises need to be made. But I feel like with monoblocks, we probably shouldn't be making compromises. So anyway, let me know what you think. And thanks again to all you Patreon supporters and you other people that support the channel, watch my videos, buy my stuff, do everything that y'all do. Even you guys that don't subscribe and watch the videos, I appreciate you guys too. That definitely helps my channel and helps keep me going. And trying to hit 20K subs doesn't really change anything other than it just feels like a good milestone to get to. And we're so close. Anyway, thanks again. And until the next video, have a nice day.